There's an important debate in Washington right now that most people don't know anything about, and it could affect how good your internet service is at home and at work.
That's right. The question is, what's the best way for the web to operate so that everyone has the best internet possible? Jennifer Wishon has that story from Washington.
Each day, the internet becomes more integral to the way we live, learn, and do business. And the Federal Communications Commission has been trying for years to figure out how to ensure the internet serves everyone equally, with all traffic over the web getting equal treatment, so that no business or website is able to move faster over the net than any others. The idea is known as net neutrality.
Without net neutrality, there's a real risk that internet service providers could choose to give preferential treatment to certain companies, certain websites, or degrade access to others.
But in January, a federal appeals court threw out the FCC's net neutrality rules, essentially saying the FCC doesn't have authority to regulate high-speed or broadband internet service providers. But the court gave the commission some guidance on how to rewrite the rules without losing in court again. The commission plans to release those rules next week, and the chairman says everything is on the table.
It's really integral as these services, as internet becomes so essential in our lives. Now is really the time for them to act.
Derek Shawnee and other advocates for net neutrality want the FCC to reclassify the internet in federal law so that the internet would be considered a telephone, giving the FCC full authority to regulate it. Critics say that's regulation from more than a century ago that doesn't belong in today's modern technology.
It's the type of regulation that would have been very familiar to Grover Cleveland. What are we doing talking about it for the 21st century?
James Gattuso of the Heritage Foundation worked for the FCC in the early 90s. Instead of putting the internet in the same category as phone and water service, he argues the agency needs to stay out of it and let the free market determine the future.
The internet is dynamic, innovative, constantly changing, constantly coming up with new ideas. The FCC is none of that. The FCC is slow, it's bureaucratic, it doesn't come up with new ideas.
Gattuso compares it to the highway. Increasingly in congested areas, people are given the option to pay more to get where they're going more quickly in so-called fast lanes. He says it makes sense for faster internet service providers to be allowed to do the same thing. Cut deals with companies who want their traffic prioritized into a fast lane into your home.
Unless you believe that money is somehow an illegitimate way to allocate resources, this is totally unobjectionable. It sorts out consumers by need, and those that need something more or desire something more should be able to obtain it in the marketplace.
But advocates for net neutrality argue that if big companies like Netflix can purchase a faster lane into consumers' homes, then startup companies can't compete.
The next Facebook or the next Google wouldn't be able to get off the ground.
For advocates like Derek Shawnee, giving the FCC power to regulate these aspects of the internet will guarantee it remains open and equal. But critics like Gattuso warn such regulations will ultimately lead to worse internet service, not better. FCC commissioners vote on the newest proposal next week, then the public will have the chance to weigh in. It will be months, though, possibly a year, before any new rules are adopted. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, this is one where we all need to be involved in this debate because it does impact the future of the internet, and in particular, the future of startup companies on the internet. It's been a great leveler in terms of technology where you don't need a lot of money, you don't need significant capital in order to have a market influence. And if these rules get passed where companies with money can buy a priority position on the internet, then it changes everything. So be involved, learn how you can lobby the FCC and lobby against these rules. Well, in other news, the Benham brothers are speaking out about why their show on HGTV got canceled. John Jessup has that story from our news bureau in Washington. John?
Gordon David Benham says a smear campaign was run against him and his brother. He told Deadline.com that they were told by someone close and in a high place that he and his brother had an image problem due to that smear campaign. The cable network HGTV canceled the Christian brothers' upcoming real estate show Wednesday after a report about one of the brothers' activities against same-sex marriage and abortion. David says HGTV made a decision based on one tiny segment of our culture, and had they heard from the rest of the culture, I think it would have been different. At this point, it's over. Deadline also reports Benham told CNN he loves gays, but hates the gay agenda that tries to silence people of faith. You can find the story by going to cbnnews.com. Nigeria's military says its army is committed to rescuing those 276 kidnapped schoolgirls taken by Islamic militants from Boko Haram. But the group is also on a bigger mission. They want to turn Nigeria into an Islamic state. Mark Martin reports.
A former Nigerian army colonel describes Boko Haram as a monster that needs to be dealt with. The Islamic terrorist group kidnapped nearly 300 girls in Nigeria, and in a video released earlier this week, announced it would convert the daughters of Christians and sell them.
There is a market for selling humans. Allah says I should sell.
CBN News terrorism analyst Eric Stakelbeck says that's no surprise.
According to their leadership, this is mandated in Islam. Slavery is legal in Islam, and the Quran says that this kind of thing, they call it the spoils of war, is perfectly legal. Now, does the world step in some way to stop that? Can it be stopped? That remains to be seen. But right now, Nigeria does not seem to be doing enough to battle back against this group.
Now the U.S., Britain, and China are involved in sending teams to Nigeria to help search for the girls who were abducted more than 3 weeks ago.
Our embassy in Abuja is prepared to form a coordination cell that could provide expertise on intelligence, investigations, and hostage negotiations, and to help facilitate information sharing and victim assistance.
Meanwhile, Christian leaders from across the U.S. are gathering to pray for the Nigerian girls and urging fellow Christians to take action.
We are here to pray for safe return of these young girls who are students and whose only guilt is that they seek education.
It is, in fact, a black eye to the body of Christ for Christians to be silent.
A bipartisan group of Congress also showed their support this week, pausing for a moment of silence and prayer for the safety of the girls ages 15 to 18. Mark Martin, CBN News.
The disintegrating situation in Ukraine has produced an increase in anti-Semitic attacks against Jews living there. As Chris Mitchell reports, many are talking about escaping to Israel, and some have already left.
19 Ukrainian Jews arrived in Israel this week after escaping the violence engulfing their country. Others still wait and worry about relatives left behind.
I'm from Donetsk. I arrived to Israel in 1991 with my family. But still now I have in Donetsk my aunt. She's 86 and I'm very worried.
Elena Feingold works for the Jewish Agency, helping people come home to Israel.
For the Jewish people, it's different. And it's different in all cities. The one thing is common, that we feel that the Jews want to go to Israel.
In the early 1990s, more than 1 million Jews immigrated to Israel from the former Soviet Union, many of them from Ukraine. That tapered off, but now immigration from the Ukraine has risen more than 100% in the first months of this year. Friends Elena and Daria arrived on this week's flight.
Because it's a difficult situation in my country. I'm from Ukraine. That's why I'm here. And I love Israel. I've been here many times. I have relatives here. That's my country.
It's a hard situation. Every day people are dying there. I don't know if it's safe now to be there for Jews.
This flight was sponsored by the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, which began helping Jews immigrate to Israel more than 25 years ago.
The embassy has already helped more than 40,000 Ukrainian Jews come home. Sometimes it was in times of conflict. This seems to be another occasion where Jews are endangered in Ukraine. There has been an increase in anti-Semitic attacks, and they're wanting to come home.
Parsons sees this return as a part of biblical prophecy.
We do believe that the return of the Jewish people is a fulfillment of God's promises to bring the Jews back. Even in the Hebrew prophets, it speaks of Gentiles assisting with this, and we see ourselves in Scripture as those Gentiles that God has beckoned to, as it says in Isaiah 49, to come help with the return of the Jews back to the land.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Israel has been getting praise from an unexpected source, writers in the Arab world. The Jerusalem Post reports that's the finding from a new study by the Middle East Media Research Institute. The Post says most of the Arab stories mainly compliment Israel for its high technology, and they say Arab countries should learn from it. But other writers also praise Israel for its democratic system, education, and morality. And one writer from Kuwait pointed out Israel also attracts great Jewish minds from all around the world. Gordon, that is indeed unexpected, but I'm sure for Israel, welcome praise.
Well, it's a whole lot different than what they're used to, which is let us destroy them, let us drive them into the sea, let us wipe them off the map. That's been the rhetoric, and we'll see if there is a true sea change. There was a whole lot of promise with the Arab Spring, and that we're now calling it the Arab Winter. Is the Arabic world going to go down into chaos, or are they going to rise up into democracy? But the fundamental point here is that culture matters, and specifically in your culture, what are your thoughts about God, and what does God want to do for his people? When you get those things lined up, you get a whole lot of innovation.
A cultural studies club at Harvard University plans to host a Satanic Black Mass. The Satanic Temple will stage the service next Monday at the Ivy League school. A spokesperson says of the event, it is a declaration of personal independence from what some see as counterproductive cultural programming. The Harvard Cultural Studies Club is hosting the Black Mass as part of a series of explorations into diverse religious cultures. The groups also recently tried to place a monument next to the Ten Commandments at the Oklahoma state capitol. A remote village in Guatemala covered by volcanic ash is now getting help from Operation Blessing. Last year, the remote village of Panimache was covered in black ash after a nearby volcano erupted, burying crops, destroying their food supply, and impairing their soil. Operation Blessing brought in an agronomist to teach the villagers how to build raised beds with local materials. Families participate in weekly workshops on family farming. Operation Blessing also provided them with rich soil, plastic sheeting, organic fertilizer, and plenty of good seeds to get started. Remember, you can always get more about Operation Blessing by going to its website, ob.org.